I'd give whatever is left in this body to look that person in the face one time and say thank you with my own mouth.
Then look up, Loretta. You? Why would you do that for me?
I didn't do it for you.
There is a particular kind of quiet that falls over a room when a woman begins to cry at a podium and everyone decides at the very same moment to look down at the tablecloth. On the 16th of March, 2024, in a rented banquet hall on North Liberty Street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 340 people looked down at the tablecloth. The woman at the podium was 68 years old. Her name was Loretta Mays. She was wearing a lavender suit she had bought in 2011 and taken in twice, because 6 years of kidney disease had taken about that much of her. She was holding the edges of the podium with both hands, the way you hold a railing on a boat, and she was saying the thing she had been saying in that church for 6 years. She said that somebody had been paying her medical bills. She said she had never met them. She said she did not know if it was a man or a woman, young or old, rich or just faithful, and that the hospital would not tell her, and that she had stopped asking in 2020 and started praying instead. She said she prayed for that person every single night by a name she made up for them, because a person deserves a name. And then she said the thing that made the room go still. She said she would give whatever she had left in her body for the chance to look that person in the face one time and say thank you. She had already looked that person in the face. She had stood 2 feet from her in a kitchen in November of 2017, drying dishes, and she had told her exactly what she thought of her. There were 340 people in that hall. There was a head table with a white runner and a gold cloth. There was a folded sheet of paper at the bottom of Loretta's notes with an engagement announcement typed on it, her son's name and another woman's name, which she planned to read in about 4 minutes. And there was a woman standing at the back near the coat rack in navy scrubs who had not sat down all evening and who was holding her car keys in her closed hand like she had been ready to leave since she walked in. In about 40 minutes, somebody in that room was going to say a name out loud, and that room would not recover from it. To understand what happened in that banquet hall, you have to understand what was sitting in a file cabinet on the 3rd floor of a hospital 4 miles away. In April of 2018, an account was opened in the financial counseling office at Baptist Medical Center. It was what the billing system called a third-party payer arrangement, and it was attached to Loretta Mays's patient record, and it listed a payer by an initial and a surname and nothing else. No address the family could see, no phone number, no relationship they could trace. For 6 years, that account absorbed dialysis copays, a vascular surgeon who was out of network, 11 days of hospitalization in 2020, an ambulance ride in 2021, a transplant workup, and a monthly pharmacy bill that would have taken Loretta's entire Social Security check and asked for more. Nobody in the family ever saw the total. They saw the absence of a total. They saw bills that did not arrive, and collection calls that stopped, and a woman who kept living when the arithmetic said she should not have been able to afford to. Over 6 years, the family built 4 different explanations for it, and 3 of them were completely wrong, and the 4th one was a lie that a man let stand because correcting it would have cost him something. So there are 3 questions in this story. Who had been paying Loretta Mays's medical bills since 2018? Why that person spent 6 years and a great deal of money making sure she never found out, and what was written on the intake form on the line marked relationship to patient, because it was 1 word, and it was the first thing a lawyer circled in red. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The answer to all 3 questions does not start in 2018. It starts 30 years before that, in a hospital laundry room, with 2 women folding sheets on the same shift. Loretta Mays was 17 years old in 1974, and she was pregnant, and she was not married. The pregnancy did not go to term. That detail matters less than what happened around it. Her mother did not put her out, but her mother stopped introducing her. There is a difference between being thrown away and being set slightly to the side, and the second one lasts longer. At church, the women who used to fix her collar before service stopped fixing her collar. The pastor's wife began greeting her with a nod instead of a hand. Nobody was cruel. That is the part people misunderstand about a place like that. Nobody has to be cruel. They simply move you, quietly, one row back, and then another, until you are sitting in the back and cannot remember walking there. Loretta married Curtis Mays 2 years later, when she was 19 and he was 21, and worked at the mill on Vargrave Street. And from that day forward she began building a version of herself that no one could ever say that word about again. She was at church at 8:40 every Sunday for the next 4 decades. Her hemlines were correct. Her hats were correct. Sunday dinner went on the table at 2:15, and it did not go on the table at 2:20. She learned the names of every deacon's wife and every deacon's wife's mother. She joined the usher board, then the missionary circle, then the benevolence committee. By 1990, nobody in that congregation could have told you there had ever been a year when Loretta Mays was 1 row back. Here is the thing about her that most people got wrong, including her own son. Loretta did not believe that respectability made a person good. She had seen too much to believe that. She believed that respectability made a person safe. She had learned at 17 exactly how fast a community can decide about a woman, and she had spent every year since building a wall out of hats and hemlines and perfect attendance, and she genuinely believed that wall was the only thing standing between her family and the sidewalk. Everything she did after that, including the things she did in a kitchen in 2017, came out of that belief. It does not excuse it, but it explains it. And this story does not work if you do not understand it. She worked 31 years in environmental services at Baptist Medical Center. People say that gently now, the way you say it at a funeral. What it actually was linen. It was pushing carts of wet sheets that weighed more than she did down a corridor in the basement. It was the industrial washers that ran at a temperature that would take skin off, and Loretta had 2 pale ridges on the inside of her left forearm for the rest of her life, from a day in 1988 when a door swung the wrong way. It was hot in that basement in a way that people who have never worked in a hospital basement do not understand. She was good at it. She was fast and she was thorough, and by her 12th year she was the one they put new hires with. And she was proud of it, and she also never once let her son tell his friends what she did. Those 2 facts lived in the same woman without ever shaking hands. When Andre was in the 8th grade and a teacher asked him to write about his mother's occupation, Loretta told him to write hospital administration. Not a lie exactly, just a shape. On her shift, there was a woman named Delphine. Delphine came in late, maybe once a week, and laughed loud enough that you could hear her 2 corridors down, and told stories about men she should not have been dating in a room where the acoustics carried. The supervisors did not like her. Loretta was not supposed to like her either. They worked side by side for 11 years, and Delphine was the only person on that floor Loretta ever really talked to, and when Delphine laughed, Loretta would look around first and then laugh too. Curtis Mays died in November of 1999. He was 46. It was his heart, and it took about 90 seconds, and he was in the driveway. The life insurance through the mill paid $11,000, and the funeral was $6,000, and the house note was $840 a month, and Andre was 16 years old. Loretta worked doubles for 11 straight months. She would come home at 7 in the morning, sleep until 1, be at the school by 3:15 so Andre would see the car, then be back at the hospital by 11. She did not miss a Sunday, not one, in 11 months. Andre watched all of it. He was 16 and old enough to do the math and young enough to feel it as a debt rather than as love. And that is where his obedience came from. And that is why, 17 years later, he could not open his mouth in a kitchen when it counted. He owed her. He had always known exactly what he owed her, down to the 11 months. By the mid-2000s, Loretta had a rule: about the woman her son would marry, and she said it out loud often enough that Pearl used to finish it for her. She wanted him to have a better woman. And better, in her mouth, never meant richer, it meant finished, a degree, preferably two, a family with a name and a plot in a cemetery you could point to, and a mother who was still married to the father, a woman who had never had to explain herself to anybody, a woman with no year in her past when she sat one row back. Between 2005 and 2016, Andre brought 6 women to that house. The first one, Loretta called sweet, which was a verdict. One had a child from before, and Loretta said nothing at all about her, which was worse. One was a hairdresser with her own chair and her own clients, and Loretta asked her, kindly, at the table, whether she had thought about going back for something. Not one of those women ever came to that house twice. The rule had a date on it. Loretta wrote it in 1994, sitting in a folding chair in a church basement, and it had a name attached to it. That name would not be spoken again in that congregation for 30 years, until a Saturday night in March of 2024, when it came out of the mouth of a woman standing by a coat rack. Delphine Barrett raised her daughter alone in a second-floor apartment on Watown Street with a window unit that only worked if you hit it. She was loud. She was late. She was the kind of woman who would give you the last $40 in her purse on a Tuesday and then have to borrow 30 of it back on Thursday, and she never once acted embarrassed about either half of that. She had a laugh that people described, years later, at her funeral, and every one of them described it the same way. And she had a daughter named Simone who was quiet in exactly the proportion that her mother was not. In 2003, Delphine's hands started swelling. She said it was the water. She said it was the heat in the basement. She wrapped her rings in tissue and put them in a drawer and kept working. In the spring of 2004, she went to the emergency room on a Sunday because she could not catch her breath walking up her own stairs, and a resident who looked about 26 told her that her kidneys had been failing for a long time and that she was going to need dialysis. She was 46 years old. She was also, and this is the detail that decided everything, 3 months short. The hospital had reclassified a group of positions the year before, and Delphine had been moved into a category with a longer eligibility window, and she was 91 days away from the coverage that would have carried her. 91 days. She kept working through the summer because she was trying to get to that date, and working through the summer is part of why she did not get to that date. In October of 2004, Delphine Barrett filled out a benevolence request at Mount Carmel Missionary Baptist Church. There is a form. There has always been a form. It asks for the amount requested and the nature of the need, and it asks the applicant to state, in their own handwriting, why the church should assist. Delphine wrote 4 lines. People who saw that form said her handwriting on it was careful in a way her handwriting never was, like a woman signing for a house. It costs a proud woman something to fill out that form, and Delphine Barrett was the proudest woman on Watown Street. The committee met on a Tuesday evening in the basement. 7 members. They took it up third on the agenda. The request was denied. I want to be careful here, because how you hear that sentence is going to change twice before this is over. For now, hear it the way Simone Barrett heard it, at 19, from a woman in the parking lot who was not supposed to tell her. What a denial actually looks like is not dramatic. It looks like a woman driving to Charlotte for treatment because a clinic there was $60 cheaper per session, 90 minutes each way, 3 days a week. It looks like skipping a Thursday because the car needed a tire, and then skipping the next Thursday too because nothing bad happened the first time. It looks like selling that car in January. It looks like a 47-year-old woman sitting on the edge of a bed at 3 in the morning in February with her feet swollen past the ankle bone, doing arithmetic she has already done 4 times that night. Delphine Barrett died on the 9th of March, 2005. She owed $41,000. Simone was 19 years old, and she was the only child, and she drove to the hospital at 6 in the morning and signed for the body. The obituary ran in the Winston-Salem Journal, and it was 4 lines long, and Simone cut it out and put it in her wallet, and it has been in every wallet she has owned since. She never asked who paid for the funeral. She was 19. She assumed the church had done it, in the way that people assume the church does things, and it did not occur to her for 20 years to look at the bottom of that obituary and read the line about arrangements. Simone became a certified nursing assistant at 21. She did it the hard way, in a program at Forsyth Tech that she paid for one course at a time, while working nights at a facility off Peters Creek Parkway, wiping down bed rails and turning bodies every 2 hours. She became a licensed practical nurse at 26. She was good at the part nobody trains for, which is talking to a frightened 70-year-old at 4 in the morning about something other than what is frightening them. In 2011, she started a home care agency out of a 2004 Corolla with 190,000 miles on it. She had 2 aides, both of whom she had worked nights with, and a laminated flyer she had made at a print shop on Peters Creek, and a name she picked because it was the street her mother was born on, Fairview. By 2019, Fairview Home Care had 60 employees and contracts with 2 facilities and a waiting list. She never stopped wearing scrubs, not out of humility, and anybody who read it that way was reading it wrong. Scrubs were the uniform of the only room in the world where nobody had ever asked Simone Barrett what her mother did. They were armor. And they were also, eventually, the exact reason that a woman in a kitchen took one look at her and knew precisely what she was worth. She had one rule, and she had never said it out loud to another human being. No mother dies on her watch the way hers did. She met Loretta Mays in the fall of 2016 at Baptist Medical Center in a hallway on the 4th floor. She was there for a client's discharge. He was there because his mother had gotten lightheaded at church, and Pearl had called him in a way that made it sound worse than it was. They talked for 11 minutes by the elevator. He called her 4 days later. It was 8 months of something easy. He cooked badly and would not admit it. She fell asleep during every movie they ever started and denied it every time. They drove to Myrtle Beach in the middle of October when it was too cold to get in the water and got in the water anyway. He talked about his mother constantly, in the way that a man raised by one woman talks about that woman, and it took him 6 months to arrange for them to meet. The first time Loretta Mays met Simone Barrett, she did not recognize her. She had no reason to, but Simone recognized Loretta before she was fully through the door, because Simone had been looking at that woman's face in a photograph from a church picnic since she was 19 years old. Thanksgiving, 2017. The house on Devonshire Street. Loretta washing collard greens in the sink in 3 changes of water, the way her mother had taught her, and Simone standing beside her with a dish towel, drying and stacking. Loretta was not unkind. "That is the whole problem," she said. Simone was a hard-working girl. She said she could tell that about her right away. She said she admired anybody who worked with their hands, that she had worked with her own hands for 31 years, and there was no shame anywhere in it. She said Andre had been carrying a lot since his father passed, and that he needed a certain kind of woman now, a finished woman, and she said finished the way you would say a color, like it was just a fact about a thing. She said some people come into your life for a season, and there is no sin in a season. And then she said the last part. She said that she had known a lot of women who worked hard, and that hard work was not the same as background, and that Andre needed somebody whose people were from somewhere, whose mother could be pointed at. She did not know what she had just said. She had no idea. She was talking about a stranger. She had washed her greens and dried her hands and delivered an assessment about a woman whose mother she had folded sheets beside for 11 years and whose mother's name she had voted on in a church basement in 2004. Simone did not answer. She dried the last pot. She put it away in the cabinet to the left of the stove, and Loretta said, gently, without looking up, that the pots go on the right. In the car, on Peters Creek Parkway, Simone asked Andre one question. She asked him if he was going to say something to his mother. He was quiet for about 1.5 miles, and then he said that he would, eventually. That word ended it, not the kitchen. The kitchen was a woman Simone had never expected anything from. The car was the man who had driven 90 minutes to bring her soup in February. Simone Barrett ended it herself, 4 days later, on a Monday, over the phone, in under 3 minutes. She had been called a season, and she had watched a man consider whether the season was worth a conversation. She was not going to be anybody's eventually. Andre did not fight for her. He drafted a message in December and did not send it. He drafted one in March and did not send it. He drove past the Fairview office on Silas Creek twice in 2018 without stopping. There is no version of this story where that is anything other than what it was. In March of 2018, Loretta Mays was diagnosed with stage 4 chronic kidney disease, and by June it was stage 5, and by July she was on dialysis 3 days a week at a center off Hawthorne Road, 4 hours a session. In the fall they began a transplant workup. Then the arithmetic started. Medicare covers 80%. Everybody knows that number. What people do not know is what the other 20% looks like on a page when the treatment is dialysis, because 20% of an enormous number is an enormous number. Add a vascular surgeon who turned out to be out of network for the fistula placement. Add transport on the days she could not drive herself. Add the pharmacy. Loretta's Social Security was $1,406 a month. The house note was gone by then, but the taxes were not. Andre made $58,000 a year as an athletic director. He went to a credit union in August of 2018 to ask about a second mortgage on his mother's house, and was told what he already suspected, which was no. He sat in that parking lot for a long time. He was 35 years old, and his mother had worked 11 months of doubles for him, and he could not do this one thing, and there is nothing in this story he was ever able to say about that. Loretta prayed about it, and she told the church she was trusting God, and she never told a single living soul the actual number. In April of 2018, a woman in navy scrubs parked in the visitor deck at Baptist Medical Center and sat in her car for 40 minutes without going in. She was not sure what she was doing. She had told herself on the drive over that she was only going to ask a question. The financial counseling office is on the 3rd floor, and it is smaller than people expect. Ernestine Lloyd had been in that office, or one like it, for 44 years. She had sat across a desk from thousands of families at the exact moment they found out what a thing was going to cost, and she had watched them do the arithmetic in front of her, and she had learned to look at the paper while they did it. Simone asked her a question that Ernestine had been asked in that whole career, maybe 9 times. She asked whether a person could pay a bill that was not theirs for somebody who was not family and never be named. Ernestine said yes. She said there was a form. She said it was 1 page. And then she said the sentence that this entire story hangs from. She said that once you sign this, I cannot ever tell her, not if she asks me, not if she begs me, not if she is dying, and it is the last thing she wants to know. She said it twice, because she always said it twice. Simone Barrett signed it on the 17th of April, 2018. On the line marked Relationship to Patient, she did not write none. She did not write friend, and she did not write anonymous. She wrote 1 word, and 6 years later, that word was the first thing a lawyer circled in red.